everyone. We are back here. It is our annual look at the San Diego Comic-Con floor map. It is always truly one of the highlights of the year when the floor map comes out because it's one of the best places in the world. I mean, there's a reason we put so much work into covering Comic-Con. We cover things, pretty much literally 365 days a year, all sorts of conventions, theme parks, all that stuff. But there's something really special about this floor, and it really is the surprise factor. It's something we always tell people coming into the con. That's a favorite thing, and I think those longtime attendees know it, that, kind of the best thing about Comic-Con is all the surprises that are there. We just don't know what any of these companies here are going to be showing us. So got my trusty interactive wand here once again, so we can kind of take a look at the booth and talk about some of the booths and some of the things about the floor here. Now, as in past years, we will have a guide to the convention center coming up, and so that will show footage of the various escalators and where these various spots take you and what it looks like and all that. So we're not going to go dive too deep into that, but we will talk a little bit on that side. But trust that there will be a different video coming up as we do annually. If you need to look at something right away in terms of where going up the escalators take you and how it breaks off into separate lines and all of that, you can check out our 2023 version immediately. But that said, as we talk about the floor as a whole, let's talk about some changes for this year and things to think about on the larger scale, which is that it is a different type of year from last year in that celebrities should be back. There is no writer's strike, no actors strike. So last year, I mean, it was a really tough go on the floor, and we knew that going into it, is that not having that big Hall H presence, Ballroom 20, etc., is going to make everybody that much more concentrated here, and of course the offsites, and we did feel that. Additionally, we don't know, as of this recording, there's not been any official statement about the carpet coming back, though, but it seems, carpet is an expensive thing, and I'm not sure if Comic-Con International is ready to take on that expense quite yet or not. We know there's still businesses, struggling across the board in the entertainment industry. And so this floor is very much fueled by a lot of that entertainment industry. And so it's tough to know if we can count on that. But last year was a challenge between having the more crowded floor without carpet. It was a lot of work there. So hopefully this is the most normal year we've had since 2019. I mean, we'll see. But on our march there, it does feel a bit more normal for sure than, having a strike looming as of this time last year. But that said, again, we said, there are differences. So, for example, there is no Blizzard on the floor. There is no Entertainment Earth. I don't recall a Comic-Con without Entertainment Earth. I'm not sure how long they've been there, but it's just one of those things that in my mind, it's always been there, as you're coming down these escalators and you're seeing it here, and they've got that beautiful 2-story booth there. A lot of great signage. So that's going to be gone this time around. And so, again, as this stabilization, we've, see a lot more change since 2019. And obviously no surprise there with the pandemic and all of the challenges that it has had across the floor there. So as we look at things, we also have to remember that there is an impact of the portal. The portal doing exclusive sales there. So Mattel Creations, we can figure UCC, Hasbro, Funko, etc., are going to be part of that. And so as a result, that means that we're going to have those many more people that would be jamming into lines are going to be now out and about doing other things. And it's one of the things, it's just like the theme parks with their kind of fast pass situations or mobile ordering for food, is it's nice to be able to not have to wait in long lines to do things. But if you don't have to wait in a long line to get something, then that means that you're out doing other things and clogging up other arteries here. And so there's always kind of a cause and effect of these things. So more of these groups entering the portal also means more people not having to wait in lines. And so then they're going to go wait at other lines at places that may not be in those portals. And hopefully that does help, especially as we look at our Artist Alley side of things there, and other independent vendors across the floor, and a lot of the great people that we know take up these booths, that it'll help them be able to have that much more business there. So now let's talk about entering the floor. And again, we will look separately at the various options here in terms of in a separate video of the external part. But last year they were having everybody in the mornings enter at Hall G. And then you were going up the escalator and then fracturing off either to around this side behind Ballroom 20 up on that second level there and coming down, or it was coming up into the sales pavilion to queue up and come down this way into small press pavilion. So those are the two ways that people are coming if you're lining up early in the morning. Now, remember, if your goal is not to be first on the floor, if you're not going after some exclusives, if you're not going after that first wave of swag or signings or whatever that might be offered at the booths at the crack of open in the morning, you can just wait things out. Now, last year, I have some notes here. They started letting people outside of Hall C in at about 9:45 on a couple of those days. So that 9:30 open became a little bit later on a couple of those. At least that's what I have here in my notes. For us, looking at kind of the processing of the floor there, again, the hope was that 9 to 9:30. Now, something to know, especially if you're a new guest to Comic-Con, is San Diego Comic-Con does like the best job of getting people on the floor of any place we've ever seen. I mean, they get so many people onto the floor so quickly. And not only that, they do set a goal. Those people that come earlier and go upstairs and come down the escalator, they're trying to open a half hour early. They really do try to get that 9 a.m. open. So depending if you're going to go that way, and a lot of this video is going to be focused on that side of things, is like, okay, this is for that 9 a.m. crowd. But if you're just coming in at 9:45, 10 or whatever, you can just linger, have a nice breakfast across the street somewhere, and then make your way in and go through any of these doors here and not have any delay at all. But for our early morning crowd that's going to be chasing down some things on the floor at least one of the days, we are going to get there on the earlier side. We're most likely going to be entering at Hall G down here. They're going to have us go up the escalator, fracture around, and then you'll have a choice of either going to the Ballroom 20 side of entrancing above Hall H, or coming over to this side and entering via the small press pavilion. Above it is the sales pavilion there. Now let's talk about why people choose those two sides there. For those coming through sales pavilion, I mean, in the old days, the sales pavilion was kind of, and by old days, I mean like more than a decade ago, everybody was choosing sales pavilion, or a lot of people were choosing sales pavilion because it was just kind of where they pushed you. And most people were coming down this way and making their way into the floor from here. Also in those days, you had Sideshow over here, and that'd be a big attraction, even though they were never big on swag, really. It was just kind of a fun stop as you entered onto the floor. Then it was always kind of like the quote unquote secret. I mean, the secret entrance was part of the reason I started Parks and Cons, was like, wait, where's this other entrance that people come into? Definitely not a secret anymore. They pretty much just divide you up and you can go whichever way you want. But a lot of people do choose to do that entrance going behind Ballroom 20. It's a long walk, but ultimately when you come down, you're entering over in this area. Now, very important if you're coming down this escalator, and again, we'll talk about this in our video about entry and all of that, to know they have in the last few years really started dividing that escalator. So there's 3 escalators down. The leftmost is going to hook you further to the left, which those people that are going to want to go more towards the Funko side, DC, all of that, they're going to bring you in via Lobby G or Hall G, and you're going to enter in this way. For the others, going to enter in more this way. So it's either going to fracture up here, straight shot to Mondo, Funkoville, Stylin, etc. If you want to go to Sony, new to the floor there, maybe that's going to be a good spot. So when you come to this escalator, just know, and we just put up a post on social kind of showing it in action, but that leftmost, they're going to push you this way. They're not going to let you cross the line and come this way. You'll have to enter in up here, and then you can go this way, but you're not going to be able to cross over to here. Or rightmost, and if you're rightmost, then you're going to go through here. And again, you could also hook left. Of course, you can go wherever you want once you're through the doors there, but this one. So for us, we generally like getting to the center of the floor. I mean, I really love being in the center of the floor. It's kind of my favorite thing. Is I just feel like there's so much potential in here, and it's so hard to know who's going to have good stuff. I mean, of course, there's some press releases and stuff, but if you watch some of our other videos or our live shows, we talk a lot about the excitement of kind of the unknown, and you just never know what Paramount Plus might be giving out at open, or what Hasbro might be doing, etc. So for me, I'm always trying that rightmost side, and then I'm going to make my way over here. Again, this is if there's not some agenda. If I have something that I'm going to go to, you know, the Ashley Eckstein signing, and it's going to be right at open, then I'm going to probably stay leftmost and come right up here to $7 a pop over here in the corner near Funkoville. So again, depending on what your goals are, we'll decide which of those two directions you go there. Now, in terms of the floors, one general strategy before we talk more about that kind of opening morning and some of the options there and just some of the booths in general. If you do have preview night, I do highly suggest trying to use some of the time just to explore. And I know not everybody has preview night, and that's is what it is. Obviously, it's just how it works out. But I know for us, always preview night's been incredibly valuable, particularly that last hour, to try to explore and see what's going on at these booths for the next few days. So that might be where we go to Hasbro and see if they have their signing schedule up like they have the last few years. Might go to Mattel for the same. Go to Lego and ask what their situation is this year with giveaways. Go over to IDW. What are they giving away? Dark Horse and so on. And it's kind of a nice, that 8 to 9, a lot of people get their things that they want to get in those first hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of preview night. And a lot of people bounce. That last hour, things kind of soften up at a lot of these booths. And so that's a time we'll go to really do some reconnaissance and try to make a plan for some of the other days. What are some things we see that are really catching our eyes there? Now, something else to think of, just kind of a general philosophy, is just making your way around the floor. If we don't have carpet, it is going to be really tough on the feet again. As is well documented in many videos and podcasts I do, I've had multiple surgeries on both of my feet, a lot of hardware, bolts and nails or whatever else screws in my feet. So it is really tough walking on a convention center floor that's just that cement, that does not have carpet. But that being said, that's what we've had since the pandemic, and I'm hoping that's not the case this year, but I am expecting it will be the case for at least one more year. Again, hoping it's not the case. The best announcement for me is if the carpet comes back. That'll be better than Marvel coming or Hasbro selling exclusives again at the floor or whatever else. But that said, one of the things we learned in that first year of making our way around the floor was because of the lack of carpet, it took a lot more time to be able to make our way through the floor because I just needed so many more breaks. So depending on your situation and your ability to make time, preview night may become part of the time of making your way up and down a lot of rows there. It also, people are deal philosophically different with it. Like for Carmel and I, our goal at every convention, I don't think we've ever had a convention that we didn't do this. We go up and down every single row. So as big as the floor is this, or when we're at Anime Expo here in July as well, we make sure to go up and down every row. If that's not your goal, if you're just hitting some of the bigger name booths, you're just going to hit Artist Alley. Maybe you're going to just go to, you're going to go to Toddland and BB Create and Chris Mays and, some of these great artists that are there. That's fine as well. But if you are going to try to hit a lot of the floor and you've not done this before without the carpet, your mileage may vary in terms of what you're able to do there. Okay. All right. So now let's just talk about the floor and kind of some of the things to watch out for in terms of these booths and some of the things that, really catch our attention and we really love here, and some of these ones that are denoted on the map. So, of course, Funkoville is always an awesome thing to see what they're doing over there. One of the things I really love about Funko is since the pandemic, they've leaned into really doing a lot with the show. They came back from that pandemic and really established that Funkoville corner over there as Warner Brothers was taking a step back. Now, Warner Brothers has come back in the form of this DC booth, and we're appreciative of that. But, a lot of these booths have been kind of come or go and things like that, and Funko really leaned into it. Of course, they've got Mondo and Loungefly over there now as well. I do want to point out, once again, $7 a pop. They've done a really great job of putting together some good signings over the last few years, so don't sleep on them. Keep an eye on what they're offering. I know, as I said, Eckstein is one of the signatures for this year. Sean Ashton is another one. Last year we got Ross Marquand there. I was super excited to get him as Red Skull, especially in a year where there was very little celebrity presence because of the strikes and all of that. Now Sony, it'll be really interesting to see what they do there. That is new, coming back to the floor. That's one we haven't seen. And you'll notice, like, for example, there's not a Netflix here. Netflix came, they went, they're going. These big studios, they kind of pop in and pop out sometimes. And so hopefully having Sony there, they've got some cool things to promote. Obviously with Venom 3 coming, that seems like that would be a really fun kind of Comic-Con tie-in there. Into the Spider-Verse, of course. Anything, we don't have an official Spider-Man 4 coming right now, but just anything leading into Spidey, Marvel, etc. could be fun in terms of whether it's photo ops, swag, etc. The DC booth, as I talked about earlier, the legendary Warner Brothers booth, sadly, no longer. And then DC was no longer as well. Then DC was a small part of WB. It's kind of, they've gone back and forth on things, but this seems to be very similar to what we had last year in terms of DC taking that spot. Now, I'll be honest, I really did not care for what they did with the DC booth last year because it was so focused on, it just didn't feel like the space allocation was really great. They have the shopping going on there, and we'll talk about it when we get to Hasbro, but there's just not really room in these sorts of booths to be doing shopping and displaying costumes, in my opinion. They're just too It's even as big as they are. Obviously, this is a big footprint here relative to so many. It's just not big enough to be queuing long lines of people up to buy McFarlane figures or T-shirts or comic variants and still have costumes on display and all of that. That said, it will be interesting to see just generally what they do. We know Superman is filming right now. James Gunn has said he'll be too busy to come out with filming. We'll see about that. But it would seem like with Creature Commandos coming later in the year, and just the fact that a year from now we're fully into a new DC cinematic universe, that this would be a really great time to let some of that stuff shine there. I don't think we'll be looking backwards. I don't think we'd be looking even at a lot of the other animation outside of Creature Commandos. It seems like this booth would be very forward looking in terms of the media, but we'll see. Toink, a big, not as big of a booth there, but a big draw because they have a lot of great exclusives there. Tokidoki coming with some of those exclusives as well. Great stops there. Disney plus Hulu, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Disney has actually been pretty big at San Diego Comic-Con since the pandemic. It's been interesting with all the challenges Disney's had economically, all of the entertainment cuts in the parks, etc., but they've still brought things like FX. They've had various other off-site pieces, and then again, a nice presence here, despite the fact that they have D23 Expo coming just 2 weeks later. One thing you can count on, I think, for Disney Plus booth over here, Hulu, as well as the Star Wars Pavilion, is whatever visuals they have, you'll also be seeing them at D23 Expo. So if you are an attendee, and we know a lot of people in Southern California that will be hitting San Diego Comic-Con and D23, if that is the case, I think you can count on those visuals, whatever they may be there, of being able to check them out at D23 as well. So I wouldn't wait in any long photo op lines if you don't need to, because you'll probably have another opportunity. It's an interesting world we live in now too, because you've got Disney plus Hulu here and then Doctor Who, and that would normally have nothing to do with each other. But as I'm sure everybody watching this knows, Doctor Who with the new Doctor there was on Disney Plus this year. And so there is some connective tissue there as well, kind of giving the Disney this further block in that area. Nickelodeon always does some great stuff. They always have a really incredible booth there. And I feel like they are one of the rare booths, unlike what I felt I saw as much from DC last year. Our experiences there is that they're able to find a way somehow to pull off selling things and having experiences there, and it seems to work pretty well. Now, we've got to note Bandai. Bandai, we talked about every year since the pandemic. They have gone big. I believe they're down in the number of booths from something like 11 last year to 6. They've got another one over here on the far right side here, in what's normally considered the gaming side of the hall. But Bandai has been big. They've done a lot of great booths. They're really great with their customer service. They're great with their fan appreciation. And so always suggest checking them out. I know for me, NECA is one of the booths also that's really NECA and Super 7 have just gotten a lot of my interest in the last few years, as I still love Hasbro, but Hasbro and Mattel honestly have dimmed a little, as I feel like NECA and Super 7 have been doing even more creative things in the collecting area, so I always make sure to stop by those booths. Those TMNT, that 2-pack is probably going to be the big, harsh, hard thing to get there at the NECA booth, but I would imagine Alf, Nosferatu, etc. shouldn't be as difficult to get. I know that's one of those booths that usually Sunday comes and they got a few things left and I go and pick up one there if I didn't, get something ahead of time there. Now, of course, we also see the continued proliferation of things like, as we talk about Bandai, that kind of leads into the anime, manga, Gundam areas, whether it's Konami, of course, Viz, the Bandai booths, Kotobukiya. Not that they don't do some, Marvel and Star Wars stuff too, but you do have Toei, all of these things that come together and really give a little bit more of that. So again, in July, we have Anime Expo. It is a massive convention. It really is on the level of San Diego Comic-Con. In fact, it always feels more crowded to us on the floor than even Comic-Con does. But you also have that continuing to lean into San Diego Comic-Con as well, to bring that fan base and give them a lot of great things to see there. Toynami being part of it as well, etc. Jazzwares, old Gentle Giant location, Jazzwares there. They've become pretty popular. They've become part of the portal as well. And so they've got some good exclusives in years past, and it was something to keep an eye out on. Now, in terms of looking at these on the giveaway side, though, there's not necessarily a lot of, for sure good things there. I mean, there never is from year to year, but I wanted to point out like something like Paramount Plus here. So last year they had the Star Trek poster that came out, and then the Star Trek poster that got the booth shut down, and they ended up not giving it out at all. But the poster itself was a really cool poster, but it's also a good lesson. And we talk about this a lot in other areas, is that that poster was such a big deal for Subspace Rhapsody from Strange New Worlds. It was such a big deal. It shut the entire booth down. Like, I was in there as part of the group. We were in the panel. Scott Mance was like, head over to the booth and get a poster. And we're like, that doesn't seem like a good plan to tell, all of Hall H to go to Paramount booth. But we did, as well as everybody else. It got shut down. The poster became this, $150, $200 poster on eBay. And we're like, well, we're not paying that. And then you roll around to later in the year, it shows up at WonderCon. It's accessible there. You can buy it now on eBay for like $20 or something like that. So it's just kind of a reminder that no matter how busy some of these things may seem, if there's something that interests you that you're not able to get, know that there will be opportunities after the con to get them. Also, a suggestion in that when we're talking about swag as well, is if you see things, whether it's swag or things that people are purchasing, but you see things that look cool, never hesitate to ask somebody where they got them. There are things that we all lean into, like for us, the Walking Dead bags of past were always a really big deal. That's something that's gone away. We haven't had Anchor Bay there or anybody giving out those kind of nice bags in a while there. In fact, in the more modern times, I think it's been easier to get nicer quality bags out on the floor. I'm sorry, outside of the floor than on the floor. But we do know there are exceptions to that, and we'll talk about that as we get over here to Dark Horse in a minute. But as we make our way, it's important to know also from down here around where you're going to have Toddland through, this corridor on these two sides particularly are going to be the toughest to walk down, pretty much from open to close of Sunday. So just keep that in mind. If you want to come down here to see stuff, of course, because we all want to come through here and see stuff. But if you're just trying to get down here, always easier to travel via the lobby or on this line right here. But definitely lobby is easier. For example, if I was coming in the floor, maybe it's now 1 o'clock, Thursday afternoon or whatever, and I'm over here in Artist Alley and I want to get to Dark Horse quickly, probably the easiest way is just to vacate the floor here around lobby G, make our way down this way and come back in over here. So these veins get very, very, very busy. And so it's just important to understand that it's rare. I mean, we always do our closing. Carmel's done this as a tradition for many years, the closing of the floor on Sundays. And it's nowhere near as busy at the closing of the floor on Sunday as it is in the middle of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, etc. But it's still really busy in these areas here. And she has to kind of watch for that and go around because there's just a lot of cool things. This is obviously, as you see, where a lot of money is being spent here. And so there are a lot of cool things to see, a lot of photo ops, a lot of things drawing fans in. Now, let's talk about Hasbro for a second. So a great announcement, something really exciting for old school Hasbro fans, is this is the first year since the pandemic that they've announced that they're going to be selling exclusives again at the show on the floor. So last year, they had their offsite over at Sparks Gallery. You could buy a couple things there. They were still doing QR codes for other things and whatnot. This booth, though, has been really crowded. Not that it wasn't before when they had two booths, but the fact that before they had the display booth and then they had the sales booth, and it kind of divided things up. And I feel like that worked much better. I know as a fan, it worked much better. Now, what's interesting here this year is they have said they'll be in the exclusives portal, the lottery. So they are going to be selling physical items. Again, they have 4 things. But where will they be selling it at? We do not know. If they try to go the same route as DC, then it's going to be even a messier booth than it's been. But if you went by this booth last year, it was a tough booth to walk around. It was just overly crowded. When you look at all of the licenses they have, and they're pushing things from Star Wars and Nerf and whatever, Dungeons and Dragons and Transformers, etc. It's just there's not enough. They have too many products to really even house in one booth alone. Now, if they're going to add in selling to that, if they're still going to do a few signings, I'm just really curious to see how this works out and what goes on at this booth. I'm really hoping they have a plan to do pickup and purchase of the items from the portal somewhere else, but I don't know that they would want to spend that money, and I'm not sure that is the case. And so we'll see. It's a big question mark right now. One of the things we'll be eager to check out on preview night if we don't get more concrete information before then. Now over here, Mattel Creations. Obviously, in the last couple of years, we've had the change from Mattel to the Mattel Creations booth there. With that, they've got the pickup sales booth up here, and then this is the display booth, which is this is what I would love to see Hasbro do. Is even if it's a smaller booth for pickup, this one from Mattel works pretty effectively here. But then here you have a very busy booth with all your displays. Awesome for photography and showing what you got to sell there. And then you do your purchasing over there. But obviously, there is currently, to my knowledge, no equivalent for that for Hasbro, where they have some other place that they're going to be selling nearby. So who knows? It may be something that's in one of the hotels. Back in the day, if you did pre-sale for Mattel, we would be picking it up for many years over in the Marriott, way at the far end of the Marriott. We carried a bunch of Stay Puft Marshmallow Mans across the Marriott, across the convention center, and back to our cars. So they may be doing something like that. They may be renting out a spot. If they do, we'll talk more about that in other media. Then the Star Wars Pavilion is always great to see. Like I said, the only difference this year is I always feel like in a D23 year, it's not any less awesome to check the stuff out. It's just we know as people that also cover D23, it doesn't have quite the same importance to us because we'll be able to see everything at D23 as well. So if there's something we need to see first, of course, we're going to go by and take pictures of stuff and share it because we covered these things. But, there's just not the same pressure there because it's very unlikely that there'll be much in this pavilion that doesn't end up at D23. Lego, really curious. Will we see Lego take a step back in the world like Hasbro is kind of coming back and like, hey, maybe let's do an couple exclusive sets. Maybe let's come back to those free minifigs. The minifig drawings were one of the highlights of Comic-Con for many attendees. I know a lot of people that loved those things, even though the lines would go all the way down to the Hyatt sometimes. People loved those drawings. We participated in many of them in the earlier years, and then they just got a little too busy for us. Now, the booth they did last year with that kind of blockbuster take was absolutely fantastic. Loved the look of it, the visuals. If you got one of the blockbuster cards, faux cards, really great. But it has been a bummer not having them be part of the show the way they used to be. They used to be one of the cornerstones when it really came to the fun of the exclusives and the giveaways. Those minifigs were some of the best giveaways at all. So I'd love to see them return to that. We'll see. There are things like that, the carpet, etc. Hasbro selling things at the floor, and you hope you can get back to those glory days sometimes. You didn't realize how good you had it, maybe. Viz, they do a wonderful job with their booth. Always love to see what they have. But again, similar to the Star Wars Pavilion, it's interesting. This one, we will see at Anime Expo. So whatever they do at Anime Expo, we know it'll be something similar, probably for San Diego Comic-Con. IDW and Dark Horse. These have been two of the highlights for us of booths in the last several years. Just feel like they've done a really good job with signings, with swag, with all sorts of stuff. I mean, Dark Horse has some great signings there. The various packs of like little freebies and stuff that they give out. I love the Dark Horse bags. They've had some of the best bags on the floor really the last several years, and so good stuff to keep an eye out there. Talked about Super 7 earlier. Love the various things they do in kind of the retro world. They always have fun stuff there. Factory's got some really awesome exclusives this year. I think this is the year that I'm most into things that they're showing off coming into the con. Definitely going to check them out. Diamond has some fun, figures and things like that. I always love also their preview side of things that they have out there. Kodo's always a must stop. Distillery, Alex Ross, Aspen, Boom, Oni. We see a bunch of these comic vendors. For us, those are all must-stop booths. We check them all out. Distillery had a real minimalist kind of approach to things last year. Interesting to see how they come back into it this year. Alex Ross, kind of the opposite. It's the maximal approach with massive mural. That Villains mural they had, I believe that was last year, was epic. I mean, everything about what they do in terms of that look. Now, of course, Marvel is going to be a key center of activity for a lot of people. And going back to that idea we've talked about with Mattel and then Hasbro not having it, or DC not having that separate, this is really essential because you have the sales portion here and then you have the show portion here. And I really love this, again, for so many reasons. This allows Marvel to showcase, whether it's costumes, video games, whatever. They have a lot of different ways to approach that with this massive booth, their stage, etc. And then over here can be the messiness of lining up to buy things. It's kind of nice having those broken down in that way. But they suck up a lot of the air in the area, a lot of attention. Alex Ross as well. Make sure not to miss checking out some of these booths. Boom doesn't necessarily have the same, or it doesn't have the same IP or inside editions, but they've got some really incredible stuff there. Oni's doing incredible work. Excited to see what they're going to be sharing at Comic-Con. So glad that they're part of it. Book World, you want to find the softest carpet, whether the convention center is carpeted or not, Book World will have the softest carpet. They always invest in that. So a walk through here, even if you're not a fan of, Penguin Random House or any of that, but they've also had some really good signings there in the past few years. So don't sleep on them if you're interested in any of these, various properties that show up at Comic Con, which you are obviously if you're watching this video and attending the show. They're one to keep an eye on because they might just have a cool Star Wars signing or something going on there. Small Press Pavilion, cannot overstate the importance of checking this out. You are going to find so much uniqueness here. So everybody in that area is going to have something totally different from others, and you're going to find some really wonderful items there. As we make our way to this side of the floor now, UCC is going to be a huge draw up here. They really know their exclusives market, and they always seem to find at least a few things that are kind of like some of the hits of the con in terms of the long lines and people wanting to get out there. I know we've seen a lot of people excited about announcements in the last few days from them. They should be part of the portal, we would anticipate, and as such, people will be lining up via their lottery wins over there. As we make our way more into this area of the floor, what's unique about this area is that it's just more of a hodgepodge of things. You have collectible toys. You have Star Wars Black, more modern toys. You have Hot Toys figures. You have T-shirts. You have hats. I love this area because this area feels like the most normal part of a convention. Like we cover so many cons, and this area feels like a normal one. So as much as I love seeing all the big media stuff down there, and I really do for sure, it's always fun to come over here and see some of the more familiar things. Now that being said, you'll still have something like Toink come over here or a Fig Pen on this side of the floor. It's not that there aren't big booths over here, etc. But there are some fun kind of callbacks to just kind of a quote unquote normal con, if we want to call it that. Gold and Silver Pavilion. You definitely have Bronze Age books in there as well, but it's always fun to check out the comics. There's some things there that are just, great as a museum pieces in terms of like, particularly those Golden Age and Silver Age, slabbed books. But we always take a lot of time going through there and checking out those bins. The honest truth is most of our comic buying at San Diego Comic-Con comes from more the artist alley side of things, or exhibitors out. Image, of course, there is no Skybound this year on the floor. They made a break away from Image last year. Now this year they don't have a booth, although they'll still have presence at San Diego Comic-Con. But a lot of our stuff is more on the newer side of things, although my favorite part of comics these days is the old school collecting. It's something because these booths are so expensive at San Diego Comic-Con, a lot of times it's hard for those with a little bit lower budget as we have to be doing too much shopping on that side. Then we get over here, we've got Pokemon back here. Pop Mart, of course, is a great draw. Hoyoverse, Bandai, we already talked about, and Udon. These are all going to be good draws in this area amongst other booths as well. This, again, is often referred to as kind of more the gaming side of things a lot of times. But you'll also have an Alex Pardee kind of on the fringe over here in the border. Some great stuff in here. So Pardee is a great example. As many years now we've had him over in this vicinity. And although he is like an artist, excellent artist, you might expect to see him in Artist Alley. It's why you have to really look at the map of the exhibitor list and really go through it to find everything on there and take your time. And it's also why at the end of the day, just making your way around the entire floor is always the most helpful if you can. It's a huge floor. It's an overwhelming floor. There are areas that are particularly, overwhelming in terms of all of the visuals there, but it is the most fun to walk around as well. Any minute that we're not on the floor, I'm kind of like, man, even when we've been at my favorite offsites, favorite panels, we're in there, we've been in there for Hall H, Marvel, I love it, etc. But still in the back of my head, I'll be like, I wonder what's going on over at the, Dark Horse right now, or things like that. So highly suggest, if you're somebody that's just dipped your toe into the floor before, maybe try to take a little more time with it. It is one of those things, the more time you invest in the floor, the more things you're going to find that you love there. There may be little signings that hit here and there. As always, follow along with our friends over at the San Diego Comic-Con unofficial blog to check out, updated lists of signings and all of those things. And of course, Comic-Con International's homepage there with everything, information there, particularly when you're looking at the portal and directions to the FAQ is there, etc. So we are going to continue to put videos out to help prepare you for San Diego Comic-Con. We do have, 3 in the queue as I'm recording this one right now, and then another 3 on the list for the next week or two. So lots of video to come. We hope that you'll subscribe, like our videos, share them with your friends, and all of that. So with that said, we're going to wrap up here, and until next time, we'll see you online somewhere.